Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 257 called Sarah Herron. Okay guys, before we get started, in case you haven't heard, I wrote a children's book about IVF and I'm so excited about it and I would love for you guys to check it out. It's called Work of Art and it's the story of Sonny, my 8-year-old now, the day he learned that he was a work of art, born via IVF and assisted reproductive technology. It's about secondary infertility. It's about how much I love being a mom to my daughter ever and why I wanted to have another baby so badly. It's about loss. And of course, this is all palatable for kids because it is a children's book. It's for young readers, ages 4 to 8. It's a hardcover book. It's beautifully illustrated by Fed Bonificini. And I would love, love, love for you guys to check it out. So there's 2 different versions of the book. There is a limited edition, personalized, numbered copy available for you. And I have about 20 of those left. I'm only doing 200. And then there's a regular version of the book. The personalized copy includes shipping in the US and the non-personalized copy does not include shipping, but it's only about $4 in the US. So just wanted to let you guys know that Work of Art is out there and I'm super excited about it. Check out my Instagram if you want to see some photos of it and some of the illustrations and some more info. And definitely go to infertileafgroup.com/books if you guys want to pick up a copy. Thanks so much. All right, my guest today has such a big heart. I immediately fell in love with her, talking to her. It's Sarah Herron, who you guys probably know and love from The Bachelor. She's a Bachelor alum, and she's done many other amazing things as well. And today she is going to tell us all about her family building story. So we're going to start out with what she knew growing up, sex education wise, and kind of what she didn't know, which is a common theme on this show. She's going to talk about she and her husband, when they started to try, what happened. She's going to talk about finally getting pregnant via IVF. And then she's going to talk about the devastating loss of their son, Oliver, and what happened there, navigating grief, and where they are today. So she is such a sweetheart. She's so well spoken about all of this. I had the best time talking to her and I just adore her. So Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really hope you guys like this one. It is impossible not to love her. So without further ado, this is Sarah's infertility story. Hi, Sarah. How are you today? Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and connect with your community.
Same. I was just telling you before we started recording that everybody I've talked to who's met you is like, she is so lovely. She's such a sweetheart and so outspoken and, just really wants to shed light on everything, So I'm really, really happy that you're doing this. And thank you again. Of course. So I always like to start with, did you always want to be a mom?
Great question. I wouldn't say like I did or didn't. I think it was one of those things for me that I actually didn't know. I just didn't know which direction I felt until I was about 31 or 32 years old. Mm-hmm. Maybe even still then, I was just kind of like, I don't know, I'm really enjoying life. I don't know if I really see it right now, like maybe in the future. And then lockdown happened and Dylan and I were like, you know what? It would be really fun to have kids. And because we were like, we have this dog that we go out adventuring with and like, we just have so much love for him. And it's so awesome spending time with our dog. Like imagine how awesome it would be with a family. And so I think that was kind of the light bulb that went off was like pandemic lockdown. And we were like, totally. Oh, we should have kids.
Right. Yeah. And were you and Dylan on the same page with that? Like you guys always want to have a family and grow a family? Okay.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised because at the time we weren't even engaged yet. And so I went to him and I was like, look, I think this is like what I want to do. And I want to know if you're down or not. And, we've talked about how fun it would be, but like, maybe we should take it seriously. And would you want to try? And he was like, Yeah, sounds fun. And
Yeah.
it was like off to the races.
I love it. You're like, what else
Yeah.
do we have to do? We're locked down. Like, we can't
Yeah.
go anywhere. We can't really see anybody.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me what happened. Like, once you guys started to try.
Yeah. So, like I said, we were like, let's do this. And we spent, I'll back up because we immediately went and had a preconception doctor's appointment with my OBGYN because,
Ooh, smart.
yeah, we just knew like, I guess, so I was 33 at the time, 33 or 34. And I kind of had an idea it might be difficult for me to have kids. My mom struggled. She suffered through many, many miscarriages.
Oh, I'm so
And
sorry.
thank you. Yeah, and I was her only pregnant or like her only live birth child
Mm-hmm.
that she had. And
Okay.
so I knew it was like, given my mom's history, it could be difficult for me, but I didn't really know the
Mm-hmm.
extent. And so I was like, let's just go chat with my OB and see what she says. And she was like, yeah, give it a go for 6 months. Typically women 34 and up, we want you to try for 6 months on your own. And if you don't have any luck, come back and do fertility testing.
Okay. So
So,
it sounds like you had a pretty good idea about the age, around like
mhm.
35 and all that stuff. Like I didn't know any of that when I was going through it. I always say like I was so completely clueless and I'm like embarrassed how little
Yeah.
I knew about my body and my fertility. Did you
Yeah.
know what was your fertility like education growing up, like sex ed and all that? Like what did you know about getting pregnant and fertility in general?
Nothing. I mean,
Okay.
nothing. Like I'm a millennial. We're from the generation where like they really didn't teach us anything. It was like a class in fifth grade where they're like, here's how to put a condom on a banana.
Totally.
And like I knew that you need a sperm to fertilize an egg. And I knew that like that was it. And my generation, we all got put on birth control in eighth grade. I don't know if that's normal where everyone else lives, but like
Really?
super early, like as soon as we got our periods, we were put on birth
It's like a
control.
town mandate or something.
It was
No, it's
kind of
just
like,
like
yeah, it was
just what
kind of
everybody
like
did.
a social thing. It was like,
Hmm.
well, if all my girlfriends are getting on birth control, I want to be on birth control too. And
Wow.
the moms did it. And yeah, I mean, like young, and
Mhm.
I look back on that and I'm like, that probably probably wasn't good for me, but we didn't know any better
Right.
back then. Our moms didn't know any better. So that was the extent of my knowledge.
Right.
And then I was on birth control all the way until I was about 28 years old,
Okay.
came off, and then I'm like somewhat, I've never been pregnant. I mean, aside from my one pregnancy with my son Oliver,
Hmm.
never been pregnant before.
Hmm.
Never like, and so that kind of was like in the back of my head when Dylan and I decided to start trying. I was like, I don't
Hmm.
know. I've never even had any like close encounters. I've never had
Hmm.
any scares. I've never
Hmm.
been pregnant. So this might be interesting for me. And then I started learning, oh, it's actually really difficult to get pregnant. And it has to come down to a very precise moment of the month every month.
Totally.
And I just started to learn like how difficult it was.
Right. So when you guys went in and did the initial testing, what did you find out? What were the results?
She was able to pretty much diagnose me with diminished ovarian reserve on the spot.
Wow.
We did the blood work and then she did like the follicle count and a pelvic ultrasound. And immediately she was like, you have diminished ovarian reserve. I know that's not what you were hoping to hear.
Mm.
Here's some pamphlets on IVF.
Hmm.
And it was really scary and felt very cold. And I'm like, I went from 1 minute, like my boyfriend and I are daydreaming about having kids to being told I have
Hmm.
to do IVF. And it all just felt very jarring and
Totally.
like kind of like but this isn't what happens to me. This is what happens to you when you're like in your 40s. And
Hmm.
I'm not there yet. And I just had never even considered it. So it was
Right.
really, really scary.
So what did you know of, I mean, just hearing that term diminished ovarian reserve, like, were you like, what is that? Like, I mean, did you have to go to like Dr. Google and, figure it all out?
Yeah. I mean, I immediately started crying in her
Mm.
office and I did, of course, go home and Google it, but it just
Mhm.
felt like, feels like the garage door is coming down on you. You just like, it feels, the term feels so heavy and like you're just all of a sudden like this decrepit, dried up old lady.
Oh my
And I didn't
God.
understand it.
That's such a good analogy. The garage door coming down on you. I've never heard that,
Yeah.
Sarah. I love that.
I have never heard that either. I just said it.
You just coined it and it's
Yeah.
good. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's so true though. You're right.
Yeah. And so, of course, it just felt like my world is over. Like it was so traumatizing when I
Mm,
first found out.
yeah.
And now, like I'm like, oh, so many women are affected by it and it's not the end of the world. But like to a young woman in her
Of course.
early reproductive years, it definitely felt like it at the moment.
Absolutely. So did
Yeah.
you and Dylan go home that day and talk about IVF and like what were the next steps for you guys as a couple?
Yeah, we immediately started talking about it because we had like all the pamphlets and we were like, okay, I guess, I felt really bad. I felt like, is he not going to want to be with me now? Like, we're not even engaged. Like, if it's going to be a long road to try and have kids with me, like maybe he won't want to stay.
That's such a valid concern, right? I think so many of us think
Yeah.
that, like, if I'm not going to be able to do this, do they want to be with me? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's like we hadn't really made those
Mm-hmm.
lifelong commitments yet to each
Right.
other. And so, but surprisingly, or not so surprisingly, he was like, okay, well, let's start having some consultations and see what it entails. So we did have a few couple consultations. We figured out how much it was going to cost, and we decided to just like set our financial threshold and
Mm-hmm.
move forward with what we could and just see where it got us.
Yeah. Did you
Um,
guys have any coverage or anything like that? Insurance?
Zero. No. Dylan and I
Same.
are both we're freelance
Mm-hmm.
creatives, and so we
Mm-hmm.
pay like Medicaid essentially, and
Yeah.
there's no fertility coverage with that.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you get? Were you shocked when was it like sticker shock when you saw the price?
Oh yeah. I mean, I kind of knew growing up. We had a family friend that did IVF, and so like I had this idea even from a young age that like fertility and IVF is like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I knew it was really high, but I think when you're delivered, especially a lot of clinics are it's weird to me. Like they're like, here's our package. Buy
Yeah.
3, get 1 free. Or like if you buy 3 egg retrievals and you only need 1, we'll refund you for the other 2. It just felt so transactional and weird to
Yes.
me. And you're like, you're selling egg retrievals in a package. It's so strange. But then you're like, oh my God, like $90,000. Like
I
I
know.
can't
Yeah.
even wrap my head around that.
I remember my husband coming home when he went in because I went in first alone to the doctor, like the reproductive endocrinologist, and then he went separately and was just like, I felt like it was like a used car salesman, like the way that
Mm-hmm.
they were like shuffling this paperwork around, but not being super transparent. And it was
Yeah.
like you said, like bundling this and that, it's just like, it's such a weird,
Yeah.
I think that I mean, depending where you go, obviously, like there are clinics out there that are very transparent. I think that's more of the trend now for like new clinics that are opening and stuff, which is good. But like, I mean, when you get shoved that paper and you just see all these numbers, it's like, what is happening?
Yeah, totally. And you're just like, okay, well, it's it takes a long time to you can spend that. You might have it in savings, but then like to replenish that, you're just like, oh my God, it's gonna take like 30 years to save this back up.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was tough, but so that's what helped us kind of be like, okay, this is what we're comfortable. And of course, we kind of like overshot and then we came back down and found this like medium area of like, well, this is
Hmm.
what we're comfortable investing
Hmm.
towards it. And then when we reach that ceiling, like we're done. We have to move
Okay.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you guys kind of on the same page about that financially too? Because I feel like that's a hard one to sync up sometimes.
It is hard. We weren't on the exact same page. Of course, I was like, let's like I'll spend $200,000. And then Dylan kind of had to bring me back down to earth and was like, we can't put our whole life savings into this. Like, what if you have nothing at the end? And
Mm,
so he was a little bit more of the voice of reason and we met in a happy medium. And we've been very aligned on that ever since. Like at
that's so
first I
good.
was like, what if I want to keep going for it? But I don't know. After years, we're jumping ahead now, but like after years and years of treatment, you also start to you're like, I can't keep chasing this forever.
Totally. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me what happened when you guys started treatment.
Yeah. So we went ahead with our first egg retrieval with Dr. Amy in the Bay Area. I know
Love
yeah,
her.
so many women in your community are either patients of hers or fans of hers. And
Mm-hmm.
she was amazing. We found out she encouraged us to do pre-genetic testing. And
Mm-hmm.
we actually found out that Dylan and I are both carriers of cystic fibrosis.
Okay.
And we had no idea. So this complicated matters
Mm-hmm.
because now we're dealing with like difficulty creating embryos, and they're all like 1/4 of them are all going to be affected by cystic fibrosis.
Uh-huh.
It was kind of like a blessing in disguise that we found out through the testing and early enough on. And so we did our first egg retrieval. We were very lucky. I mean, for diminished ovarian reserve, had like very high attrition rate from my eggs, high fertilization rate. Sorry, I guess I'm saying that backwards, but like most of my eggs fertilized, most
Right.
of them turned into blasts, and then we still lost about like honestly like 2/3 of them to the cystic fibrosis PGTM testing.
Mm.
So we went through with 3 rounds of egg retrievals and banked our embryos before starting our transfers. Actually, that might be out. I think we tried one transfer and it didn't work. And so Dr. Amy was like, I think we should bank a few more
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
in case you do get pregnant. And then it's like years from now and you want more.
Right.
So we did 3 retrievals total
Okay.
to bank our embryos.
Okay. And what happened after that?
So once we had banked all of our embryos, we felt good moving forward. There were a few things like Dr. Amy wanted me to test for endometriosis because I had had the failed implantation the first time. So I did end up having a laparoscopic excision for endo. Like I swear, we opened Pandora's box because then it was like, oh, and now you have endometriosis.
Right. Did you have any idea about that you had endo? Like, did you have any painful
No,
periods, or was it more like silent
it
endo?
was
Or
definitely more silent, and
okay.
they only ended up diagnosing at stage 1. So, like, it was kind of one of those things where it wasn't nothing, but it wasn't enough to be like, "This is the reason you
Mm-hmm.
have diminished ovarian reserve." So it was just kinda
Totally.
like, I don't know. But it was good because regardless, got it out of there, moved forward, I think, the next month with the transfer, and it stuck, and that was our pregnancy with our son, Oliver.
Mm-hmm.
And we felt incredibly lucky because we're like, this is second transfer. We're so lucky. And I had an amazing pregnancy, aside from the fact that the same day I found out I was pregnant, I broke my leg. So
Oh my
that,
gosh. Yes.
yeah,
I remember seeing, like, hearing about that or reading about that. And oh, look at
yeah,
your dog in the
yeah.
background.
Gonna
So
come
cute.
hang out. So that was kind of a doozy because
How did you break your
literally
leg?
walking the dog. Yeah, love my
Speaking of, he just
dog.
came in and was like, yo, so
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, you're about to talk about me. Um, I was walking him and I tripped on a
Oh
curb,
my
like
gosh.
classic, like no big story, nothing dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
Tripped on a
Mm-hmm.
curb, smashed my knee into the sidewalk. And so that was literally an hour after finding out I was pregnant. And so we
Oh
like
my,
went to the ER and they were like, well, we can do x-rays, but like we can't do surgery. You can't even take Advil. Like it was so horrible. So I had to be on
my
bed
God.
rest
Yeah.
for 6 weeks,
Oh my gosh.
just regrowing bone because I couldn't take anything, and it was the most excruciating pain of my life.
Oh
So
my God. Sarah.
yeah, so but you know,
Ugh.
I like what got me through it was like knowing I was pregnant, and I
Mm-hmm.
bought all the pregnancy books, and I was just reading all day and
Mm-hmm.
just feeling so elated and excited to be pregnant. It helped me like get through the recovery of breaking my knee.
Right, right. You're like, I'm going to cram and like learn all the stuff and read all the things. And
Yeah.
I know that pregnancy did not end as planned, right? So can you tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that as much as you're comfortable sharing, of course?
Yeah. So then we lost our pregnancy
Mm,
at just shy of 25 weeks. I was
I'm
about 20.
so incredibly sorry.
Thank you. Yeah. I think I was like 24 and 5 days.
Mhm.
And it was, of course, nothing we could have ever anticipated or seen coming, you know, with the PGT testing that I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned earlier. It's like here we thought we had this perfect grade A embryo. It had no chromosomal abnormalities, no DNA issues, and he just got struck by lightning. It's just like you worked so
Mm-hmm.
hard to create this perfect embryo, and I think that was like the real reckoning we had to have with IVF is like for many months after is just like everyone knows IVF isn't a guarantee. It's just a shot. And it's a shot at having a pregnancy. And so I think that was just kind of like, how did this happen? You put so much money and time and resources into like creating this pregnancy, and in a blink of an eye, it's gone. And so that was in January of last year. And I think what was like so hard about it was that, I think a lot of women early on in their pregnancies, you kind of anticipate, okay, 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage for that first trimester. You're like holding your breath to get through the
Mm-hmm.
first trimester. And then
Mm-hmm.
you make it to the second trimester and you kind of stop worrying about it. And what I was never prepared for, because why would I be, was that like I was still going to now experience the postpartum of having delivered a baby, but not bringing the baby home with me. And so I was just, my body was like catapulted into, my milk came in and I had to deal
Mm-hmm.
with the breast engorgement and bleeding that lasted for 9 weeks. Like it just was the most traumatic thing to experience all that, because like I had no idea. I didn't know how to prepare for any of that. I didn't know.
Right. Of course. I'm so, so incredibly sorry for your loss. And,
Thank you.
I know I'm sure it's not easy to talk about it, but, like I said before, one of the things I think is so wonderful about you as just a human is sharing your story, and how many people you're helping by putting this out there. And,
Mhm.
like there's a lot of people that probably see you talking about it and are like, that's the only other person I know that's gone through something like this. So to have those
Yeah.
connections, I think is really, really powerful. Tell me about you and Dylan, like getting through that next chunk of time. I know grief is not linear, and I'm sure it's still really painful, but the immediate kind of aftermath, how do you navigate that?
We fortunately live in an amazing community where like everyone just came together. They shared resources. They put us in touch with the right people. We immediately started working with a grief counselor that lives here in our town. We were going to see my therapist together and individually. I mean, like any big loss, like it interrupts your life completely.
Right.
And so you kind of just dedicate your time into grieving, into mourning. And I'm really grateful that we were able to see the grief counselor together
Hmm.
and be able to process. And I don't know, I'm not even a year out
Hmm.
yet. And I have so many thoughts about like, let's see, so it was end of January. And then like
Hmm.
by February, I was like trying to pull myself together and go visit friends because I thought I needed to like snap out of it. And looking back on it, part of me is just like, oh, I wish someone had just like, I just wish I didn't try to like snap out of it so fast. Like,
Mm.
I just wish I had like taken up more space. I took
Mm.
up a lot of space, but I just wish I had given
No, that's
myself more permission that like it's okay. Like this is going to take a long time. Like you don't have to snap out of it in February. You don't have to snap out of it by June. Like you are allowed to grieve and take up this space for as long as you need. And so that's my only like regret is I just kind of look back on the year and I'm like, I
mhm.
don't know. I think I just tried to be too okay too fast.
That's such a good way to put it. And thank you for saying that, because I think you're right. I think we're just conditioned, especially as women, to, just kind of, carry on, move on, keep going, keep going. And it's so important when you go through such a devastating loss and
Mhm.
traumatic experience that, like you said, taking up space and giving yourself that grace. I don't think that we're inherently taught that we're able to do that.
Yeah.
It's just not part of, I guess, the human
Yeah.
existence. And hopefully now it is more and more like people talking about it and, things
Yeah.
like this. But
Well, like, I mean, I even think about, I think we try to like make other people more comfortable because
Mm.
people are experiencing and witnessing someone else's grief makes you uncomfortable. And so
Mhm.
to be the person who's grieving, like you're like, well, I guess it's my job to make you not uncomfortable. And, right after losing Oliver, I kind of like gave away a lot of my baby things to friends that were having babies because I was like, well, I don't need this. So, like, I'd rather you use it.
Mhm.
And I've recently started like recollecting those things back because I'm like, you know what? Like, just because my baby isn't here doesn't mean I need to like make everyone else comfortable or
Mhm.
cater to everyone and be this good doer of good deeds. Like, I can keep my baby stuff in boxes in my garage as long as I need to. I don't need to like be this vigilante for everyone else right now.
Totally. That's
Yeah.
such a good point. Yeah, absolutely. So do you mind sharing some of the resources or just things that really helped you get through that time period, and things that you might still be leaning on or using? Were there like specific like books, or you said the grief counselor, like things along those lines that people
Mhm.
who are listening might be able to walk away with?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest one was Facebook groups.
Mhm.
I because I don't know anyone who had been in the same shoes as I had been. It was easier to just like connect with strangers on the
Mhm.
internet and read their stories, whether it was
Yeah.
like it gave me hope or it just made me feel connected and not so alone. So that really helped. For the first time in my life, I got pretty spiritual.
Mhm.
And I don't mean in a religious sense, although that happens for some people, but I just really leaned into spirituality and trying to connect with spirit and meditation. So I went on a yoga retreat to Costa
Mhm.
Rica. Like that
Mhm.
was a great resource. And
Mhm.
there was a lot of books. I know there's a lot of common ones that people all read together, but yeah, I don't know. For me, it was kind of just like the Facebook groups and going on a yoga retreat and
Yeah.
just like tapping into consciousness really helped
Mhm.
me.
So
Yeah.
when did you and Dylan start talking about kind of, next steps? And obviously still, you still want to grow your family. And,
Yeah.
I know everybody's story is so inherently different depending on what happens. When did you feel like it was the right time to kind of try again?
hmm So we moved forward with another embryo transfer in June. And I think, we felt ready. It took my body a long time. I had retained products of conception. So I had
Mm,
to have surgery to remove placenta.
hmm.
That was like 9 weeks after delivery. And so then I had to recover from that. So it was a long, like physical recovery
Yeah.
before I was ready. Emotionally, I thought I was ready in June. So we did the transfer. Hindsight, I don't know if I really was emotionally ready.
Hmm.
It didn't take.
I'm so
And
sorry.
then, yeah, that was tough because we didn't even have implantation. And so now I was like, how did it go from like we also
Hmm.
kind of jumped into it thinking like I'm just going to it's going to work. Like it worked with Oliver. I'm just going to get pregnant
Hmm.
right away again and it
Hmm.
didn't. So that was like a huge splash of water in the face.
Hmm.
And then transferred again in October, same thing, no implantation. And so now we were kind of like really at this crossroads of like, oh God, we don't have any euploid embryos left.
Hmm.
And now we're not even having implantation. Like, what's going on?
Hmm.
So we decided we're going to move forward with another egg retrieval.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's where you guys are at now?
Yes.
Okay.
So that brings us up to today. And
Okay.
yeah, so we're gonna do another egg retrieval. We have two mosaic embryos and we're gonna transfer those at the same time as long as everything goes smoothly.
Mhm.
And that is like it's kind of like our Hail Mary. We'll see what we get from the retrieval, but this is the ceiling that we talked about and we're like,
Mhm.
man, we're here and
Mhm.
we're also okay with it being the last time. Like it will
Mhm.
take its own season of grieving and mourning and closing the chapter on IVF if that's what we do, but
Mhm.
we're also kind of like ready. I mean, it's
Mhm.
emotionally very very taxing as anyone knows and I don't know. I'm not someone that is cut out to do this for 7 to 10 years. I know many
Mhm.
warriors who can. I think I'm at my 3-year mark and I'm like I got like another quarter of a mile left in me, and then I'm done with the
Yeah.
race.
I think it's so incredible, Sarah, how you are able to recognize that and like have the self-awareness, because I think that it's so hard. And so many people I've talked to over the years, doing this show. And I was kind of like it too. I was like blinders on, get to the, get to the goal that you want. And not to say that that goal can't change as,
Yeah.
like, and you're obviously people are entitled to change their mind based on what's happening. But, I think it takes a lot of guts and honesty with yourself to realize like, okay, this is the limit
Mhm.
for my mental health, for my relationship, for my rest of my life, all that stuff, I never want to ever say the term giving up because I don't see it that way at all, but to pivot or to walk away or to take a different path, for people that have decided to stop doing treatment or stop doing IVF specifically. So I
Exactly.
just want to commend you for having that self-awareness, because I don't think it's easy. And I think societally too, like, you have that pressure of like, people are like, oh, just keep going. It'll work if you just keep trying, things like
Mhm.
that. But I think unless someone's walked in your shoes, especially everything that you and Dylan have been through,
Mhm.
it's hard to pass judgment on your decisions. That's your decision to make, not anybody
Yeah.
else's.
Right. Thank you. And I do also want to acknowledge, like, I talk to a lot of women who, like, I've shared sentiment with people where I'm like, but I have only been doing it for 3 years, and women do it for like 10 years. So like maybe something's wrong. Maybe I need to keep fighting. And I think as I've talked to other women, we're like, no, we're all at different stages. Like you might be someone that's also like, I only could do it for a year. Like, and that's fine. There's no difference like in deservingness or desire.
Mm-mm.
If you're someone that can fight for one cycle or 15 cycles, like we
Mm-hmm.
just all have a different capacity. And so, like, honoring that and knowing when it's time for you to tap out of this, of at least this
Mm-hmm.
method of trying
Right.
to start your family is
100%.
totally fine. And I feel very grateful and lucky that like, I got to be pregnant and I got to deliver my son.
Oliver.
And yeah, and like, if none of this ends in another pregnancy for me, at least I can always say I was pregnant. I didn't have the labor and delivery of my dreams, but I
Yeah.
experienced it. And it's something that I can talk about with other women. And I'm grateful for what I did have with Oliver. And we'll just see where the path unfolds the rest of the way.
Absolutely. No, I think that's really, really amazing. And, I also want to ask, I guess, about being in the public eye. Everybody,
Mhm.
obviously knows and loves you from The Bachelor and other things as well. You've done some really cool things just publicly, and you've been very open on your social media. How do you know, like, what to share and what not to share? And was it ever like a discussion between you guys, like maybe we shouldn't go there? Or was it always kind of like, I'm an open book? Or has it changed as things have happened?
Well, I think Dylan pretty much always knew that I share everything. So, like, when we started, he was like, yeah, this is going to be no different. And so, but yeah, like when we had the transfer in June after losing Oliver, that time we decided, let's keep this one private. Let's not share publicly. Let's see what that feels like. And truthfully, for me, it felt kind of disorienting because sure, I might have like followers, but I don't view my community that way. Like I truly view my community as like my resources and my support. And I know some people might have a hard time grasping it that they're strangers, but I'm like I feel more connected to a lot of the people that I talk to on Instagram than some of my immediate friends.
100%. I couldn't agree with you
Yeah.
more.
So when I didn't share, I was kind of like, I don't know, I feel like I miss my community and I want to talk
Hmm.
about it with them.
Hmm.
So now I think since then I've tried to make it more of like a balance because also when you do share, like anyone who lets someone into their fertility journey, is like when it doesn't work out, then you have to update them that it didn't work out and you have to
Hmm.
it's not always just like the fun anticipation that sometimes it's also the hard news and then
Hmm.
that's difficult. So I've tried to keep it like a healthy medium now, I think, of like
Hmm.
share what I feel is important, but I'm not doing the like day-to-day updates, which In the beginning, I was like, here's what everything means in IVF. And I was like, took it as my job to like educate people. And I do
Right.
a little bit of that now, but mostly it's just like, I'll update you on the parts that feel important and the parts that, I want to talk about. And then the rest is kind of unwritten.
Yeah. And when you were talking about before, when people are going through this for one cycle versus 7 years or 10 years or whatever, I think it's important to note. And I feel like you're probably on the same page that like we always say, this isn't the pain Olympics. Like it's not like because you've been going through this for X time, it's worse than this, or, like comparing people's journeys, I think can get really tricky and sticky. And I just, obviously you don't do that. And I thank you for that as well. Cause I think that, sometimes people will email me, for example, and say, I'd love to share my story, but it's not very exciting or, or like I haven't been through as much as some other people. And I'm always like, your story matters too. It's, it doesn't have to be super dramatic. It's just, I'm trying to share as many stories as possible. And, it doesn't have to be all over like a huge roller coaster. Cause I think this is hard no matter what.
Right.
And it hurts no matter what. And it's painful no matter what. So just want to acknowledge that as well for people who are quote unquote kind of like newer to this world, that it's still, we see them and we see you.
Well, a good resource for that actually is, so I'm obsessed with Brene Brown. I feel like I know all of her work is in the back of my head. And so Brene talks about the concept of comparative suffering.
Yeah.
If anyone who's listening, she has a great podcast episode on comparative suffering. I would go listen to it. It's like 20 minutes long, but essentially the concept is that compassion isn't finite. It's not a pizza pie where there's only so many slices of pizza to go around. It is infinite, and there is enough compassion and empathy as we make space for. And so just because you feel like your story might not be as dramatic or exciting doesn't mean it's less deserving of having its slice of the pizza. Everyone's story is unique to their own, and it's just kind of this concept of like, your suffering is valid 100% of what it looks like. And I hate to say suffering, but like, it's your story is valid and just like your experience of it, regardless of.
Exactly.
I like the pain Olympics though. That's a good analogy.
It's true though. It's like, yeah, exactly. I love Brene Brown. She was on, do you ever listen to Armchair Expert with Dax? She was on there. Oh, that was a really good episode.
Yeah. I love Dax as
well.
well.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap, Sarah, first of all, I'd love to, we'll keep seeing on your Instagram and what's happening as you guys move forward. And everyone I know is rooting for you guys and holding space for you. And you obviously have such a big heart just talking to you now. Like all of your, you're so well spoken about all this, like your analogies and stuff. So I don't know why I'm like welling up. I just feel like when people are so truthful, it really resonates, and I'm just really grateful. So thank you for that. But before we wrap, is there anything else that you kind of wish you knew at the beginning of your journey that you know now that you want to share with people?
Yeah, 100%. I just always want people to know that if you go to the doctor and you get that same garage door slammed down on you, that like you have a female factor infertility, male factor infertility, something that is going to make having children more difficult for you, it's not the end of the road. And I just want everyone to know it can feel isolating. It can feel like you have to do this journey alone. But I have found more community, more connection, more storytelling through this amazing community. It truly is the worst club with the best members, as they say. And I feel I'm not happy to have diminished ovarian reserve, but I am so happy and proud to be a part of this community. And I think if you can just allow that component in, it will literally be your life raft in the sea of confusion and despair, and just allow the community to be there for you.
All right. right. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to check out my children's book, which is called Work of Art, An IVF Kid Learns About Assisted Reproductive Technology. It is out now. You can go to my website, which is infertileafgroup.com/books, and order either a personalized numbered copy or a non-personalized copy. They're both available. And if you do get one, make sure you post about it and tag me. I love to see them out in the world. The reception so far has been great, and it really means the world to me that you guys are really liking it. I poured my heart into this, and I just hope you love reading it as much as I loved writing it. So also check out Fertility Rally if you guys need a community or a safe space of people who get it. We are always open now membership-wise, so you can go to fertilityrally.com and check out the membership options there, monthly, annual, whatever you need. Always reach out to me if you have any questions. You can DM me at Infertile AF Stories on Instagram, and I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks so much.